sang this song to me. There was a message in his melody, sweetest lyrics that I ever heard. There's a message in the songs of birds. He said, tomorrow is another day. Living is the only way. Tomorrow's gonna ever come. Listen to the words of the song. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be.
Good afternoon to our audience. This is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman from the Sip of Inspiration from the Champagne Connection. And I want to thank you for joining in for this live broadcast tonight. In my research for an interesting topic and someone that I thought that would be really relevant for what we're experiencing now in this country, I ran across Sylvester Boyd. He specializes in race and racism in America. As a matter of fact, not only does he do that, but he's done some acting and he's writing a history piece in a book that's going to be 3 or 4 books so that we can actually relive some of our own history in Chicago from about 1917 up to about the early 200s. So I want to thank you, Sylvester Boyd, for joining me. So welcome to A Sip of Inspiration.
Thank you, and how are you today?
Good. I would like for you to spend a little time for the audience to get to know you. I know that you grew up in Chicago, relocated to Michigan for a while, came back and did some teaching, graduated from Chicago State University. Hey, another HBCU grad in the house. I'm telling you.
The Colonels.
Yes, HBCUs are just absolutely awesome. My son graduated from one, so I really love HBCUs. And from there, he's writing. He's even had the experience of being able to be in movies and stuff. So I think that the conversation along with race and racism will be timely for this time. And with your experience, you'll be able to shed a lot of light on how we view ourselves and what's going on, especially in light of the fact that you have also had the opportunity to travel the world and live in a lot of different places. So let's get started. The hard question, which is what everybody's talking about now, is why do you think America has such a history of racial discrimination?
Well, we started out in a racial situation. We were imported or sort of put on ships, brought across the ocean in something called the Middle Passage. The first African Americans, I believe, came here in about the year 1619. We've gone through several different incarnations of racism. We were brought here for one thing, exploitation. We were exploited for our labor, to pick cotton, cut sugar cane, and that's why we were brought from Africa. That was the only reason we were brought, free labor for the European society.
You know, I often say that the problem with America today is that America has not gotten over the fact that there's no more free labor. So,
Right.
So what do you think can make the relationships better?
Well, frankly, for white Europeans to realize the damage that they caused other groups. Until the Europeans look in the mirror, white people look in the mirror and see themselves, see the pain that they caused Black Americans, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and you could go down the list. Everyone that they have come in contact with, they have exploited to some degree. And the Mexican Americans also. For example, a good example of the Native Americans, when white men rounded them up and took them in something called a Trail of Tears from the east part of the United States to the west part of the United States, because the land was more valuable in the eastern part of the United States. So they actually marched them hundreds of miles, and many Indians died on the way. So it's not just what's done to African Americans, it's anyone that is not European. So it's going to be up to white America to look in the mirror and see itself. Now, whether it will ever get the courage to do that, I don't know, because I think they float down the river of denial quite a bit, and I don't mean the river in Africa.
Okay, so I know that they do tend to float down the river of the Nile. That's so true. So, what are some of the most pressing problems in America now that we will face over the next 5 to 10 years, especially if we don't rectify the situation within the next 5 years?
I think right now we're a split country. Half of the country is liberal, the other half is conservative, and it's not where one group doesn't like the other group for political reasons. And a lot of it is based on, again, going back to the racial question. I think there's a deep-seated fear that America and the world is becoming more and more brown, and and the world is reacting to that. It's something that's going to happen no matter what someone does. You can't stop it. It's like the tide.
Hmm.
You can't stop it. It's like the sun coming up. And I think it's a fear amongst white Europeans. This is what's causing a lot of the problems politically to this day. We have had 45 presidents, and the only one has been anything other than a European. This country should be shared by everyone. Everyone's contributed to it, but there's only one group that has controlled it. And now the fear of losing that control is what's causing our problem today. In the next 5 to 10 years, that will become more and more manifest, I think, if we don't get a handle on this right now. This is a very serious situation when you have one half of the country against the other half, and a house divided cannot stand.
That's true. House divided cannot stand. And I think as if we look around nature, we know nature loves diversity. So we do have to come together and bond as a group. We've got to figure that out. We don't know how that looks, but we've got to be willing to try. How can we, what steps can we take individually to eliminate racial discrimination? Are there any easy steps, small steps, or is it just one great big step and let's get it done?
No, it couldn't be one big step, but we have to get over this thing about we'll get there. We've been getting there. When Martin Luther King was in 1963 and made the great "I Have a Dream" speech, we were getting there. Well, 50 years later, and we're still getting there. We seem to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or vice versa.
Mhm.
And we have to recognize that everyone's human. That's the whole thing. There's no people on earth that are not human. Everyone has a skin color. There's no one. I haven't seen any clear people yet. So if someone can, tell me, hey, it's a clear guy, well, they may be a little different. But everyone has a skin color, okay, from very dark to very light and in between. And most people don't even know the reason for race. The reason for race is just the adaptation to your environment, the climate that you live in. Last time I saw a polar bear, he was white, and he lived in an environment that is covered with snow, which is white. And he never would catch a seal if he was any other color. So he's adapted to his environment.
Mhm.
You find darker people originally came from darker climates, and lighter people came from colder climates. Sort of really just natural. We made a big thing out of nothing. Race should not infer anything on anyone as far as intelligence or not being intelligent. Race should not be anything but race. And that's nothing but the color of the skin. We all have a color of a skin. There's no one clear, as I said and alluded to.
So as we look at around our society today, we see recently, I mean, over the last, I guess, 10 years, a lot of police brutality, and most of it is focused on race. So how do we break that cycle?
We break that cycle. Number one, I think what we have going on is this slogan, defund the police, is a horrible slogan. That's my opinion of it. It should have been restructure our police. So someone made a big error in saying defund, because defund means you're going to get rid of me. It's all negative connotation. So that's one thing that we should take a look at, because defund is not like restructure. Police departments do need to be restructured. We need to have license for our police department. I'm one for every police officer that ever puts on a uniform to be licensed, just like my barber, just like my doctor, just like my lawyer. Why are police not required, when they have the power of life and death in their hands, required to be licensed? In this way, the state would have the power of pulling an officer's license without the unions and all these other things that come before they can get rid of a policeman that is not doing his job or her job properly. So I'm one for licensing our police officers. I think that would be a great step in the right direction. Another one is that we should have more mixed police squad cars, more police of different backgrounds interacting with each other. In Chicago, for example, here now, I see too many white policemen, 3 and 4 in a car, 2 in a car, whatever it is, and they're all white. And then I see the black policemen, they're all black. Let's mix that up, because some conversations that would take place amongst people of the same group may not take place if there was someone else there of another group. So we need to do that's a little thing. We also need to have more police involvement in the community. When I was a kid, I knew my officers that was on the beat, because we had beat cops back then. They didn't ride around the car. There were some in cars, but you actually had just like you know your postman, the police officer on your block. You knew Officer Vic or Officer Joseph or whoever it was, and they had a better handle on the community. If I did something wrong, the police officer could come to my door, knock on the door, and said, Miss Boyd, is this your son? He's out here, blah, blah, blah. He's doing so and so and so. And back in those days, of course, I didn't fear the police officer, but I did fear my mother. So it's a different time now. But I think that relationship between police officers and citizens have been just frayed from because police officers, believe it or not, in America came from slave patrols. They were the one that went out and caught the runaway slaves. So it's always been a tension between the African American and brown communities and the police officers. They're not regulated as they should be. And I think we should take a hard look at licensing policemen.
And when we say licensed, that generally comes with an educational component, because a lot of them don't have a lot of education. You know, they're straight out of high school in some places, or maybe 2 years of college. I think barbers have to have more education and continuing education classes than police officers.
Well, you know, worldwide, getting away from just the U.S., you know, places like Denmark, but they're more monolithic society than we are, because we have several racial groups within our borders. They don't have near the police shootings of citizens as we have. You go to different places in the world, we're probably the worst at that. And here's my problem with the interaction of police with the citizens. Why is it always people of color that get shot? I'm not seeing that white people getting shot like I am. And they say the police officers need more training. Yes, they do. But you don't have to train them not to shoot people in the Caucasian or European community. So they need the same training. Why would they need any different training? They just need to be respectful. They learn to have more moral values and fiber, and they don't have that. You don't need a lot of training not to shoot an innocent person or shoot people in the back. You don't need that. And so that kind of gets me when they say, well, they need more training. Well, I don't see them killing people in Evanston or out in the suburbs like they do here. Yeah, I don't see, and most of the victims are Black and most of the victims are male. So there's an implied bias in what's going on.
Right. So our next question is, Blacks and other minorities differ in assessments of why it may be harder for Black people to get ahead. What's the rationale behind this view, and what can be done to correct it?
Well, you know, the rationale behind the view, I think, is that everybody has a different background. We were the only people who were enslaved. That makes a heck of a difference in the way you approach and see things. Uh, African Americans and Indians have a different background, and African American and Asian have a different background, and so we come from different viewpoints. And so the way we view America may not be the same way that some other minorities view America. Most of the American Southwest belongs to Mexico, California, New Mexico. All of those states were Mexican. And so they're going to look at it maybe a little different because they saw their land being taken from them. African Americans didn't have the land taken from them, they were taken from their land. So that makes a sort of difference in the way you would view things. Asian Americans, they may have a bone to pick. They got locked up in World War II in internment camps for the simple reason that we were at war and the government thought that they were more likely to do something against our government than the Germans. Germans were what? European white people. And Asians didn't look quite like European white people. So these are the things that, you know, everybody's got sort of a bone to pick. The Indians, I'm sure, on the reservation, in some of the poorest people in America today, this country belongs to them. This was the people that were here before everybody else. They, I think, came across the land bridge from Africa, from Asia, across from Alaska. Mm-hmm. There was at one time the Bering Straits was solid, so you could walk across that part of the. So you got to go back a little bit. The Indians went from Alaska all the way down to the tip of South America. Different name, different tribes, but basically the same group of people that kind of spread out and diversified as they spread out. So knowing history and knowing geography, that's what we don't know. And what you don't know, they used to say, don't hurt you, but yeah, it does. It does hurt you. Another big thing we should do is have education in our schools.
Yes.
That educate people to their history. And you can't deprive me of my history without depriving the white child of their history. It just doesn't work. It's like oil and water. History is history. It's a fact is a fact. And we get into a situation a lot of times where we try to omit things from history. I took a course called History's Omission.
Oh,
and
wow.
Boy, yeah, that was one that, you know, a lot of things are left out of history. Things that in generally glorify the European society or white society is held in high esteem. And yet when somebody brown or black does something, it's kind of low key or left out altogether. When I was a kid, I could never understand why Tarzan was in Africa and he was a white man. I could never understand that. It just never registered. Or why when the Indians would do something, they were white men with their faces painted like Indians. Why not let an Indian play his own part? So there's a lot of things all down the line if you really look at it. So racism in America is like mixing up a bunch of salt and pepper and then trying to separate it. It's ingrained in all of us. We train one way or the other that one group is superior to the other, and we don't get the knowledge of who we are as a people. In order for you to feel good about yourself, you have to think highly of yourself. If you think you're not as good as somebody else, then you're going to kind of have a life that goes that way, that you won't react to things the way you should. Our school children are not taught, you know, about their culture. Joe Louis, you did just go on and on and on. Like the Great America, the Tuskegee Airmen, mm-hmm. who in World War II were assigned to escort heavy bombers across. They call them the heavies from into Berlin and into Nazi Germany, and they had white fighter pilots that were escorting the planes, and the bombers were getting shot down. when the Tuskegee Airmen took their position, they painted their tails red because they wanted them to know that they were a different group of people up here now flying. And they weren't supposed to be flying. That was a myth too. Black people are not smart enough to fly. So you always get the myths and the lies. Okay, so now they're flying, and guess what? They never lost one heavy bomber they escorted. That makes me proud. That gives me goosebumps. Look, Dr. Charles Drew. Some of the first open heart surgery was done at Providence Hospital here in Chicago. If you know your history, you will be, I'm proud. If I went away tomorrow and died and came back, I would want to be an African American. I'm proud of my people. I'm proud of what they've achieved, and they've achieved it with weight holding them down all the way. It's like running with a weight on your leg, and they still made some great Muhammad Ali, Marion Anderson. I can just go, Arthur Ashe. You just go and go and go and go. If you look at the list of who we are one great people, and our kids don't know that. And for you to get that self-esteem, you have to kind of know your history. You have to know who was there before you. We stand on the shoulders of giants. I mean, I'm proud of my grandmother and the people who picked the cotton in the South. But for them, I wouldn't be here. Some man and a woman on a slave ship was strong enough to make that a crossing from Africa to the New World. They were strong enough because if you didn't tolerate salt water very well, a lot of people don't know this. If you didn't tolerate salt water, you died and you just got stowed over the side of the ship. That was the way that was done. It was simple as that. So knowing that we are very strong, the best of the best arrived at these shores because the weak people were kind of called out. They died in the transit a lot and were out in the ocean. So but we have to know those things, and not enough of us really know. A lot of people take history as just some kind of odd science or something, but it'll give you a sense of who you are. Believe me, it'll give you a sense of who you are.
As you say, I love that. Just some sort of odd science up there. I guess they're trying to explain why there are no clear people. You're right. It will give you a really good sense of who you are and actually what you're made of, and the fact that we are more powerful than we know. So we know that race relations is a pressing issue in America. Would you think it's one of the most pressing issues in America?
It's one of many. Race relations, I wouldn't say was the most important, but it's in the top 5, I would say.
Okay, so it's in the top 5, so it's really important.
It's really important, I would say that. We got the environment. That's a major problem. We have a political problem. But one problem usually falls over to the other, like dominoes. I mean, we have a race problem, and that taints our political situation. So one falls into the other. Environment, yeah, well, if you put all the dirty industry into the brown and black communities, that's another problem that you can see a racial tinge to it. So many of the things that we have to look at are tinged by a racial dynamic. There's some race within it. You don't usually see somebody building a coal-fired plant or garbage reclamation place in a nice suburban neighborhood with mostly Caucasian people. You just don't see that. The other thing is that, I just alluded to the Tuskegee Airmen, and when they came back, from the war, they had a GI Bill, and all the guys that fought were veterans, and they came back and had the GI Bill. It was to help people with mortgages and make loans. Well, the first suburb built was in New York, Levittown, New York. And guess what? They had a restricted cover. They didn't want any black or brown people in there, and that were allowed to go into their housing. So that's history. I know that you came back, you fought for your country, you were willing to die for your country, but yet you couldn't live in Levittown, New York, right after World War II. So there's a lot of things that when you know history, you get a real picture of what your country is. We love our country, but the question is, does our country love us?
That's true. So let's talk about some of your experiences from traveling. Do you find the same issue exists in other countries, or is America just its special pot of oddness?
America is unique. Let's put it that way.
Okay, uniqueness, yes.
As I travel, but every country has problems. There's no country on earth that's paradise. But if you go to, I've been to Denmark, and they seem to have it, when they get sick, they can go to the doctor and not have to worry about a staggering hospital bill. Or I can go up to Canada and, same thing. Or I can go to England and it's the same thing. But for some reason, America cannot give us health care, which should be a right. It should be a right. Nobody wants to get sick. So you're not ripping off the system if you get sick. I've never seen anybody say, well, I'd like to catch a little pneumonia today. Nobody does that. And the only reason that we have the healthcare system we have is because we've sold out to the rich and the insurance companies. They could institute the same system and duplicate it in America tomorrow that gave all of its citizens healthcare insurance. Everybody needs it. There's not one person that don't need it, because we don't anyone know when we're going to get sick. And with the pandemic like it is right now, you can see what that means. Healthcare is very important. So that's one of America's shortcomings. Greed is a big one in America. The people at the top are right now sucking the money out of the economy like a big vacuum cleaner, basically. We don't give, you talk $15 an hour, that's a pittance. That's not, and the minimum wage should be at least that, and to me, about $20 an hour to $25 an hour. And they say, well, we'll have to raise prices. But if tomorrow, let's say, for example, McDonald's had to pay more for hamburger, they would just pay more. The vendor went up and we'll raise our prices. Why is wages different? Why are wages put into a different category? So we got a lot of, that's another thing that we need to address, the difference between the rich and the poor in this country. That's one of the other top 5. The inequities in wages and the inequities between men and women. That should be addressed. Women are over 51% of the country. Why do they have to get so much on a dollar than anybody else? If you do the same job that a man does, you should be paid the same money. There's no reason you shouldn't be. So women have been discriminated against too, just as much as almost to the degree that Black and brown people have. Maybe not quite, but just almost right there. So white males, and you have to put it the way it is. I refuse to lie to myself as an individual. I refuse to lie to me, okay? So if I said white males are not responsible for this, then I would be lying to myself, okay? There's no other way to put it. The slave master on the ship was a white male. The plantation owner who whipped Black people was a white male. And we gotta get around trying to make him feel good. He needs to look at who he is and why he did what he did, and have sort of a moment for himself to figure out who he is. Because when you look at it, when you die, the money, you can be the richest person on earth. Right now, the pandemic is a good example. If I got $1 billion, I can't go to the movies, I can't fly over the world because the disease is everywhere. So my money is gonna do me very little good right now. When you die, I've never seen a brink truck follow a hearse. It don't work. The grave doesn't get filled up with dollar bills. It just doesn't. And so we have the emphasis in the wrong places, I think. Our priorities are skewed.
That is so true. And back to the women versus men, you're right. I think Black women make 69 cents for every dollar that a white man makes, and white women is about 81 cents. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do have a lot of work to do, and white men do have a lot of work to do. They need to look at themselves in the mirror to see what has been caused, because the new theory of middle out economics, which is really not that new, is like, just like you said, if beef goes up, McDonald's just pays more for the beef, and people will buy it at the price if they're making a livable wage. Right now, they're not even making a livable wage. So what they're feeding us is, I guess, what we can afford to buy, which in some cases is junk, which is not good for us, which causes healthcare problems, which you can't go to the doctor because even on some of the healthcare plans, the co-pays are $50 and $60. And then you get a big bill at the end. Who can afford that? And
Yeah.
when I was in Amsterdam, they managed to provide healthcare for all of their citizens also. Free healthcare. Yes.
Yeah, I think, like I said, well, you got to go back to the whole structure of the country was always built on exploitation.
Okay.
You know, people exploiting one group, exploiting the next group. Uh, America was built by everyone, but it was really built on the back of black and brown people more than white people. You go to the White House, I think black people built that White House. I think black labor built the White House that the president sits in. All of our presidents sit there, but we didn't see fit to let them live there. They never got voted in there to Barack Obama. So we have a lot of issues. And, you know, the big thing is morals. America is very rich. It's a rich country as far as materialistic goods. I can buy a car. I have a nice apartment. I have all the food that I want to eat. And not everybody here has that. But when it comes to morals, America is almost bankrupt. It's a society that has lied to itself. We built one lie upon another. And, you know, you say, okay, all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, right? Liberty and the pursuit of happiness. But how can you say that when you got slaves? Something's wrong there. There's oil and water there. There's something, and that started way back when we said those things, but then we were only 3/4 of a human being. Who gave white people the right to tell me I'm 3/4 of something? They don't have that right. I'm not giving them that right. I'm a human being just like they are. So these things have to be looked at from a real standpoint. We kind of go around making people, yeah, I'm not going to tell you something to make you feel good. I'm going to tell you what is real. There's only two things. There's wrong and there's right. It ain't about black and it ain't about white. It's wrong and it's right.
In the recent election, we heard there was a lot of conversation about voting, not voting, and why is it that some people don't value the vote, and why is it we vote in large numbers but we don't receive justice? So why do you think that is?
Then you just said it. You vote in large numbers, but you don't see the results of your vote. So a lot of people just drop out and say it doesn't make any difference anyway. I know better, but a lot of people just say, well, it doesn't make any difference anyway. I'm still making $3.50 an hour doing what I'm doing, plus a little bit of a side hustle over here, and I got to go 5 places to make enough to feed my family. When I was a kid, a man could go to work, feed his family on 8 hours pay, and everything would be okay. He had plenty enough money to take care of his family. Then it got to be where the man and the woman had to go to work. And now that's not enough with the man and the woman working. So you can see the inequity. It grows. In my lifetime, I've seen that transformation between enough money that could be earned on a job to take care of a family to now is not enough, and you got to work 2 or 3 jobs some places to take care of family so that they live at a decent lifestyle. But then I've also owned stocks, okay? And I made money on my stocks, and this is where the money goes right now. You go and you get in the stock market, and the way it's going right now, you can sit in your living room and make more than some people make in a year, just because you got the right stock and you got enough money, like a racehorse. Your horse comes in, You got enough money to make you very wealthy doing nothing. You're not picking cotton. You're not building buildings. You're not doing the hard labor. Now, that's not to say that some white people don't do hard labor, but we catch COVID, number one, because we're in the jobs of the bus driver. We're in the jobs of the people that are on the street a lot, the nurses. We're in the maids in the hotels. So these kinds of things. Then you say, well, black people catch it, black and brown people catch it more often. Well, yeah, I'm going to catch it more often if I can't lay in my house all day and work for my computer. Then somebody is driving a bus and come expose her, or I'm a grocery store worker who has to stock shelves and people are going in and out of the store all day. Naturally, I'm going to catch it more often. So it's a lot of inequities. One inequity leads to another. Our country is built on not being fair and just to everyone, but the person who can get to the dollars as quickest is the person that gets advanced. And we rank people by how wealthy they are. How wealthy they are shouldn't be is not the character of a person. You could be the richest man in the world and be the most vile person you ever want to meet. So the morals doesn't come from being wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Morals and wealth have nothing to do with each other.
Let's talk about reparations. There's been conversation for years in the media about reparations, and we've seen some other cultures who have received reparations. So do you see a time when African Americans will receive reparations? And if you could put a dollar value on it, what would it be?
Oh, that's a hard one.
That dollar value thing, yeah, we'd have to do. Yeah, we'd have to have an economist do the value of money from time all over. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be scary. That's real scary. But I think there's things you can do. Maybe give African American education at the university. That would be something you could do. Free education. That would give them a chance to join the society at a higher educational rate. They would be educated better. There's things like you could actually help small businesses, African American businesses get started. Maybe they could get a special loan or grant that would be a pool of money that they could tap into, that would rotate. There's things that you can do. You don't have to, when you say reparation, everybody says, oh, get the checkbook out and America's going to make a check for every. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think I think we do deserve reparation. White people have benefited from our labors. And a lot of our, like I said, we picked cotton, but we didn't get paid that much for it. And my ancestors did a lot of things. The White House, I'm sure, was built by black people, but what was the pay rate back then? So we've been exploited. And so I do think we have something coming in the form of a little bit of a leg up, since we were so often given a leg down.
That's true. We were. And I agree that funding small businesses and free education, but I need to count my money. So we need to figure out how to write me a check.
Well, you open a business and go into that government pool and get some of that money.
That's right.
But I think I don't know what form it would take. There's lots of ways that you can kind of adjust the economy in the government so that it helps all of its citizens. Things that have been done to us have not been paid for. So as Martin Luther King said, they're giving us a blank check and it came back insufficient funds. So that's where we kind of are. And we in America need to quit lying to ourselves. I think that's the biggest thing. Be truthful. When we get to the truth, they say you should know the truth and the truth should set you free. And if we don't say call a spade, if we keep walking on eggshells saying this is what it is and it's not what it is, you're fooling yourself. And so now we're coming to the point where we have a society that's split. It's split in half right now. because some people believe the lies that one group is superior to another one. Some people believe the lies that some people are dumber than others because of skin color, whatever, or a person got more money. That doesn't make you, it doesn't make you smart. If I go out and hit the lottery tomorrow for $20 million, I'm not any smarter than I was the day before. I just have the means to do things.
That's right.
It's that simple. So I think we need to look at things a little different and quit evaluating people by how much money they have. You know, a person's worth is not their wealth, not how much they got in the bank. It goes in a lot. Yeah, money is maybe a component of it, but it also is how well educated are they? How do they respect their fellow man? What do they do with the time on earth we got? Because we only got so much time on planet Earth. We all do the same things. I say this when I do other interviews. We're born, we live, we die. There's nobody that gets around that. So the time between the birth and the death, what do you do with it? Do you help your fellow man? Or do you knock your fellow man down? And that's the question that we should be asking ourselves as a nation right now. The race situation won't be bad if you are considerate of your fellow man. If you have respect, that's one of my biggest words, respect. Mm-hmm. A husband can't hit his wife if he respects his wife. Bad things happen when you give disrespect, because disrespect will always bring resentment. It's disrespect, resentment. You're going to get them, they like 1 and 2.
So another question I have is, when it comes to hiring African Americans and African Americans getting those great jobs and income, is it true? Have you found it to be true that we have to be twice as qualified as our white counterparts? I do. But do you? That's been my experience. But have you seen evidence of that?
Sure you do. Because I'm not saying every white person is born with a silver spoon, and some white people work just as hard as anyone else, and some of them are deprived just like anyone else. But for you to get ahead in the world that we have today, and you're Black, you got to be one smart cook. Joe Louis couldn't be a mediocre boxer. He couldn't do it. Arthur Ashe couldn't be a mediocre. Venus and Serena couldn't be mediocre. We can't be mediocre. We have to be the best to get there.
And what 2 strengths do you think we should learn to master in our climb to success?
Perseverance. That's one strength. You gotta have it, and be honest. Perseverance and honesty.
And especially to yourself.
Yeah.
So, do you believe that we should rebuild Black Wall Street? Do you think it's wise, or are we even able to?
Well, that's a good. I think we should be in business like everyone else, given the same opportunities that everyone else is given. And the only, thing that holds us back is that we're not given access to the capital that we need to do the things that we need to do, just like any other individual. I walk into the bank and I can get the same amount of money and have the same business plan and have it go through the bank and be funded, then I'll be equal. And I won't have to have separate. We don't need separate but equal. We need equal, period.
Right, that's true. As you may be able to get the loan, but the interest rate will be different, or the repayment terms will be different. There's that trick in there somewhere.
Right.
Same thing in buying a car. It shows up in everything. So let's switch topics a little bit to some fun stuff. Tell me about your book that you're writing. Tell us about your book.
Okay, my book is about my aunt who went from the cotton fields of Mississippi, which we talked about, the South. She was born in Money, Mississippi. I don't know, do you know anything about Money, Mississippi or not? But Money, Mississippi is where Emmett Till was killed. And he was mutilated and thrown in the Tallahatchie River because someone said he whistled at a white woman. And that was the beginning of the civil rights movement. That was pre-Martin Luther King. That was before the movement started in 1955 from that death of Emmett Till. So that's, my folks were born in that town. So I thought that was an interesting thing. I'd never been there, but I used to sit at my grandmother's knee and she used to tell me about her mother and her father. And she would tell me how they were slaves and, you know, so I can go back in my family to those dates and those times and those places. Then my aunt came to Chicago in 1937. And but with the Great Migration, a lot of Black people left the South because the South wasn't a great place for them to be. And during World War II, of course, the economy boomed because in the 20s and 30s was the Great Depression. So after the Great Depression and Blacks left the South in droves, which was called the Great Migration. And she came to Chicago. She settled in Bronzeville. She lived on Lake Park Avenue in Bronzeville. She bought a house. She was able to do things that a lot of African Americans can do because she married my uncle Sidney, and he could pass a white. And so she was able to go places, and he was able to make deals to buy property that she couldn't have done if she had just been a Black person in that time and date. So that was sort of a leg up. He died, this was in the 1940s. He died in 1955, the same year Emmett Till was killed. I was 12 years old at that point in time. Basically, from that, they bought, before he died, he bought an apartment building. And then she bought another apartment building. And so she traveled around the world. So she's a very interesting lady. And you got to put in the perspective of the time this was. We're talking 40s and 50s. So you can't think about it in today's time. You got to think about it in that time to be able to do that. She was a millionaire when she died. So she went from the cotton fields of Mississippi to a millionaire. I thought that was a great journey. In World War II, she was Rosie the River. She worked at the Ford Motor Plant, Ford City out there. And she built engines, aircraft engines, I believe, for some of the planes that flew in World War II. So her life was very, very, very interesting.
That's and how many books are you have now? I know you said.
Well, I've written two.
Okay.
And they're all about her. This is a series, and each book takes you through a different time period. And the third one will be launched, I hope, coming up this January. We're doing the covers for it now, and we're doing some proofreading and all the things that go in to make a book a book. And I'm really excited about being able to launch the third book. Never thought I'd be an author, but here I am. I'm an author, actor. I've been a businessman for 20 years.
Well, let's talk about your business. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was exciting.
Yeah, I was and here's what I always tell people: if you can dream it, you can do it. And I got a book one time in the mail, and it was ad specialties. It was about for me to buy ad specialties. I don't know how I came about it, but I looked in it and I said, "This is interesting." And it was, balloons and keychains and all these things with different custom and printed things, logos and slogans. And I thought that was interesting. So then I looked up the company. It was a company on the back of it. I called them and I acted as though I was trying to buy something from them. And they sent more information. And then from that, I found out how I got into ASI, which is the Advertising Specialty Institute. Advertising Specialty Institute is the group the association that you get into to do advertising specialties. From that, I started to inquire how would I get into that association. They sent me a wealth of information. They sent I didn't ask for the information. They started to send it, and I found out that I could get into this group. And once I got in, then the whole world opened up. Thousands of products, pencils, balloons, caps, jackets, T-shirts, custom and printed. Make a long story short, I ended up doing business with Coors Beer out of Golden, Colorado, McDonald's out of Oak Brook, Illinois. At that time, 7-Up was in Clayton, Missouri. That was one of my clients. Frito-Lay out of Texas, the Chicago Public Schools, Western Michigan University. It goes on and on. That was my client list. And I was the chief cook and bottle washer just from getting a book. And I said, I'm going to do this. Well, I'm a person like this. If I want to do something, then I figure out, well, here's the will. I got the will. Now let me find the way. And you use it. That's why people say there's a will, there's a way. So I ended up doing that for 20 years. Wow. And it took me all over the United States for 20 years. And it fed me and kept a roof over my head. So that was very interesting. Then I always wanted to teach school. So I put in an application. I had a college degree. So to give the kids something back, as I got older, I wanted to give back. And I taught school for 5 years, Chicago Public School over in Austin and on the west side of Chicago. Dunbar High School, Michelle Clark High School, just all over Chicago I taught. Then I got to be walking down the street one day, and a guy says, hey, you look like somebody that needs to be in one of our movies. Would you be interested in being in a movie? I mean, this just fell out of the sky on me. Wasn't planning on it, never thought about it. And to make a long story short, I've been on Chicago PD, on Empire. I just received the award the first time they did it for the background acting award. So you know, life is interesting. I tell people it's interesting. You got to go get it, and don't wait for it to come to you. You got to go get it.
That's fantastic.
I left out something else.
Okay.
I worked for American Airlines out of O'Hare Field for 12 years, and was the third black crew chief, which is in charge of loading aircraft. I loaded one of the first 747 aircraft to go out, my crew, out of O'Hare. So there's another load. I mean, I've done a lot of things. I mean, God has been good, and when opportunity comes and it knocks, I'm ready to go. That's the way I looked at it. And so now, I don't think I'll ever retire. You know, as long as my health and strength stays good, I'm gonna keep going.
Well, you keep saying yes to all of the things God throws your way, so it's not done yet. You're gonna be here for a while.
Well, he's thrown a lot my way, and I thank him every day for it.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. This has been a great conversation, and I think that a lot of the things that we've talked about are things that need to be talked about in our society now, and just the honesty that we're able to bring to the conversation, that you were able to bring to the conversation, has been helpful and both enlightening. So I want to thank you for joining me, and with that, we're going to end the show. With that, as I tell my audience and listeners, do not go gently into that good night. I want you to find a hill worth dying for and take it. I want you to be the person that you have been waiting for, and to make today so awesome that yesterday gets jealous, and above all else, do it your way. I'm Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and it has been my pleasure. And as we say good night, you guys, remember, life is too short to drink cheap champagne. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
But life's too short to drink cheap champagne. I decided to buy me